G'day folks, Greg Budd from Bud's Baits here.
Welcome to the African Lure Craftsman. In the ensuing episodes, we'll be taking you along while we design and handcraft timber lures and hopefully get out into the water to use them. From early days as a kid, I've been making fishing lures. Many times on social media, I've been asked to share my secrets, and I think that day has finally arrived. I've designed lures for some of the big boys in the industry, and I sell my lures worldwide. I'll do my best to show you some of the hacks I've learned along the way. Stay with us and experience the wonders of casting lures to bass, giant catfish, tigerfish in Zimbabwe, which I'm fortunate to call my home, and cross borders with us as we'll target the denizens of the deep all along the African coast in magical places such as Mozambique. Through it all, I'll share a bit of my daily life and business experience, which can be quite tough in Zimbabwe at times, as we take you along to run the daily gauntlet of survival. Subscribe and click the notifications button to stay with us. Okay guys, we've now finished the painting process. We've already shown you the base colors and then gone on to the final detail of doing the spots, the gills, the sandbag technique and the various things like that. Next we'll be going to the epoxying process, which will hopefully finish the lure and really bring it to life. Okay, now for the next part of our lure. I have the lure we've just painted here, and this now goes to the epoxy cabinet. This cabinet here I've actually built with a little motor set up there and a deep cycle battery, but we'll go into that later. And I'll just show you now how we can epoxy this lure. We get the lure here, try not to touch it, just the wire. I have these springs pre-made, which then go onto the opposing toe and hook points, and we just rig that out pretty much like the rest of the lures in here. Like so. Now that's firmly in place and it's not going to move. What I'll always do is always give the lure a bit of a brush just to get any dust off. Here I've got pre-mixed tar bender epoxy. It's a very good epoxy resin. And what we do is we just hand brush this on. Very, very simple process. We've got to keep the rotisserie going because some of these have been painted already. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll stop it here, a bit more, there we go. We just get our epoxy and we just apply directly to the lure. Make sure we get into the eyes, bearing in mind these are 3D eyes, and you can have a problem with bubbles coming out from the sockets of the eyes. Make sure you apply enough epoxy. Thin coats. Each of these lures will have a minimum of 3 coats of epoxy, so we don't want to make it too thick. The thicker it is, the more chance of bubbles. Get into all the hook and toe points, into the eye socket, behind the gills, and then we do the other side. No real finesse required here. You can just apply the epoxy. A lot of guys panic and they start thinking the epoxy might start drying. There is a pot life to this, but you've got a pot life of about an hour for each mix before it starts getting a little bit tacky. But even then, using a heat gun from a distance applied to the epoxy, you can thin it out again and you can carry on until your batch is finished. Just put a bit more on here, into those sockets, into the toe points, around the gills, and that's done. We can do the top of the bottom. Top. Okay, same again, not too much thin coat. Make sure you get it everywhere. Long, even strokes. Drags all the bubbles out of it. Okay, bottom. So we've now epoxied these lures, including the one we've just painted. Now what we have to do is we've got to get the bubbles out of the epoxy. That can be a little bit difficult sometimes, but made easier with two tools. Cigarette lighter peep gun. Simplest way to do it is on a lower heat and from a distance, otherwise you can burn the lure. Just apply heat evenly all over the lure. That basically thins out the epoxy and it evens the surface and levels it out. Okay, once that's done, we want to get the cigarette lighter and we'll apply direct flame to the lure very quickly all along the length of the body. Now you don't want the yellow flame on the lure, it'll create black marks. So you've got to keep it on the blue flame. I use the lighter on full and we stop it in increments and we just run that flame directly across it in the low part, the blue part of the flame. That pops all the bubbles. We'll move that in increments, just turn it slowly. At the same time, you want to be looking at the lure and making sure there aren't spots you might have left out. Okay, move. Okay, go. 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 Down a bit. You do find stubborn bubbles occasionally. You just give them a few tweaks with the cigarette lighter. Go. There is the danger of the epoxy just running straight off, so you've got to be quick. Go. Go. There's a stubborn guy on the top. Go. Okay, you can move. Go. And there we have it. That's pretty much done. Now, bearing in mind that's the first coat. A lot of these have had their third coat already. That will go through several more coats, and the eye sockets will be filled. It'll give it a really good 3D look, kind of like some of the other lures here. Okay, very occasionally your epoxy will pick up bits from the mixing jar, from the air, and you just, what I like to do is get them off. I mean, although this is the first coat and I could sand it down afterwards, what I prefer to do is leave it on here until it's not quite 100% cured, so that's about 18 hours, and then do the second coat straight away. That avoids delamination later. If the epoxy is rock solid and hard, and you put another coat with it being so shiny, there is the risk of the second coat now delaminating from the first. So we've done that there. I'm going to iron it out with the flame, thin it out, and basically with the rotisserie now that'll settle. So we've finished the lure now. We've got 3 coats of epoxy on it. It's tough as nails. The beaut thing about this lure is that I designed it to take an assortment of hooks. You can have a belly hook only. You can use a big single 8-0 on the belly. You can use double 3-0s, double 4-0s, and it'll swim fantastically. I'm going to put some 4-0s on it for the purpose of this. Bearing in mind this lure is designed for big bluefin tuna and anything else, really. So I've got some big hooks on here, but that's what we designed it for. So it swims correctly with an array of hooks. Oh. Oh. Ah. Oh. 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 Ah. 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 So we're going to test this lure, this time with a 10-0. And one of the reasons I made this lure to swim like it does is so it can support the heavy weight either from the belly or the tail. The tail, it tends to flip occasionally if it's wound too fast, but the belly's perfect. That way, with this size hook now, you can use it for a plethora of big fish, bluefin tuna, yellowtail, kingfish, GTs, the whole lot. And it really makes this lure a little bit of a giant killer. But we'll show you the action now. Of course, this is not the right tackle to use it on, but it's going to do the purpose for now. So let's give you a look at that. Very versatile lure. I mean, you can put a range of different hook sizes on it. And it'll still swim. The beauty of it, it's got a very erratic action, a nice tail wagging sort of pulsing action, and on a quick sweep it flashes light to all corners of the water column. which is great, and it's something that most predatory fish can't resist. I think it's those erratic turns that really trigger strikes. Kind of like the bait fish is trying to turn away or escape. And it's certainly just after you stop on a sweep that you often get your takes. I think maybe they've been eyed out or they've been followed, and it's that twitch that kind of triggers that initial strike. Just wish I wasn't using it in a swimming pool and I was in Mozambique somewhere, or some idyllic, fantastic fishing place. So we've taken this bait from the stages of foiling, through the paint processes, the detailing, the epoxy, and whilst that all might be quite laborious, it's actually when you get it to water and you put it in the water that the lure comes alive.